Good afternoon, dear friends. We're grateful that you joined us at this presentation. We have 5 men in front of me. They are all ministers of Irpin Bible Church, and they're also authors of different books. The purpose of our meeting is to introduce the newest book by Mykola Romanyuk, our senior pastor, but also to introduce all books that are represented here. So, hello, dear friends, and many people around do not know you, so please tell us about who you are, what you do, and your family. Mykola Romanyuk, I'm 46. I come from Bochevar, Western Ukraine, and I live in Irpin more than 20 years. I first taught at Bible Institute, and in recent years I've been senior pastor of Irpin Bible Church. I'm married. I have 3 children, a daughter-in-law, and a grandchild. I'm Sergei Kolesnikov, 46, more than 20 years married, 2 children, 3 children, and I lived in Irpin, pastor of church in Irpin. Sergei Sologub, 39 years old, 17 years married, 3 children, one of pastors at Irpin Bible Church, and I'm in charge of small group Bible studies in the church. Professionally, I'm IT specialist. I am designer and programmer, also writer, yes. My name is Konstantin Teteriatnikov. I'm 43 years old, married. My family has 18 children. 4 were born biologically, and 14 are foster children. My ministry is at Eurasia Mission, coordinator for School Without Walls, and coordinator of Initiative Family as a Mission. In October last year, we have published a book about how family can realize God's mission. That's why I'm here. I'm Andriy Meleshko. I'm 40 years old, married. Will be 10 years married this year. I have a great daughter, 3 years old. What I do? I teach at a seminary at Ukrainian Evangelical Theological Seminary mainly, but also teach in some other schools. I also am trainer at Innovista Mission, and I'm coordinator for an interesting project, Digital Theology at Realis Christian Center. Thank you, brothers. I'm very comfortable in your company, and you will encourage me with your example. My name is Vasyl Ostry. I'm one of pastors at Irpin Bible Church. I also work at Chuyev Theological Seminary. I've not written a book. I'm director of youth ministry at seminary. So, you will learn from us how to write. Yes, I will. Mykola, your first memory about a book, your life experience. When you remember reading a book, first book, what's association? My grandmother tells me I enjoyed listening, but I don't remember. I remember first books, fairy tales. I read through all fairy tales in city library. Then I moved to war stories, then Robin Hood and Captain Blood, Odyssey, my first scholarship at university, and my first book that I paid for. What was the book? These are the texts, old Mesopotamian literature, translated text. I love history. I studied German, but I also love history, and I studied books of Bible literature times, and I was interested to read other books from that time, and all ancient history interests me. Mykola, you're a very serious person. Reading books You've read a lot. So the question is, how many books have you read? 1,002? I don't think I read enough, very little compared to what my father read. My father was not allowed to have higher education as a Baptist in Soviet Union, but his self-education was amazing. I don't think with my university I will ever match. I did not read enough. Okay, that's great inspiration for all of us. If Mykola did not read enough, that's great inspiration for us to read more. Sergei Sologub, what's your favorite Bible book and why? Oleg Pavlyshchuk recently made a survey in Facebook. He asked to choose 3 books from the Bible that you would keep if something happened and you could have only 3 books, and many people responded. And I chose the Gospel of John because there are many words of Jesus and how Jesus reveals himself and the Father that inspires me. That's top 1, and 2 others were Psalms, the time of prayer. There are many sad and joyful stories in Psalms when you lose orientation, when you don't know where to go. That is good choose. Choice also. Romans. If I had to choose one, that would be Gospel of John. Well, you already said that you love John, but I think Psalms for you would be more interesting because you wrote Alphabet of Worship, but you said John. Konstantin, what's your favorite author? Philip Yancey is my favorite author. What amazing grace. What's amazing about grace? It's a thick book, but it held my attention all the time. I did not get tired of reading it. It happened maybe 15 years ago. As soon as it was translated into Russian and was published in former Soviet Union, I started reading more of his books. He inspired me because he's a great author. Do you know him personally? Yes. I've met him personally. He was here in Irpin 2 years ago, and he was here at the Irpin Bible Church. We still have recording of that meeting at YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel, please subscribe, and there are many very useful videos. Sergei, what's your favorite book, in addition to the Bible, of course? I'll tell you. Before I got to know God, before I believed, I did not like to read. I did not read much. But in 1997, the Lord called me to Himself. 22 years ago, and I had a passion to read. I don't know where it came from. I could read up to 3 books a week. I never had that before. And maybe 2 most memorable books that impacted me would be George Mueller, his biography, his life in faith, and the book I read twice is Richard Foster, Praising Discipline. These are most memorable. I love Foster myself, and I recommend my friends and colleagues to read Foster after the Bible. If you take a wider genre, Andriy, what do you love, fiction or non-fiction? Okay, what's your choice? Okay, in fiction, I love detectives, historic novels, and science fiction. Any authors? There are many authors. When I was a teenager, I read everything in historical novels. Dumas, Conan Doyle. I discovered him in a new way then. I always looked at him as a detective book writer, but he loved historic novels. Talking about nonfiction, I love philosophy literature and self-education, discipline books. Manuals, not necessarily. More elements that where you could think, consider, and build myself up and build somebody else up. There was a time in my period where I would read manuals, 7 principles of this and 24 qualities of that. But my soul got tired of those useful books, and at some point I started reading fiction literature, and I discovered how amazing that world is. Thank you for sharing. And now each brother will introduce his own book. Mykola, you're the most fresh author of those present here. Pastor's Diary. Pastor's Diary. Before you tell us about this book, what are the feelings, the most fresh feelings of writing a book, and you just completed it? Well, I'll be honest. I did not write it like sitting down and writing. I don't imagine myself to be an author. In 2009, after a long time inspiration, I launched a blog. I called it Scripta, or written in Latin. And the time came when I wanted to share what was written. And when I had a window, I would write something. And some things of what I wrote were considerations of the Word of God, my thoughts when I prepared sermons or greetings or response to some events or response to some news online, and most of those texts went to the blog. And then I gathered some amount there, and by 2018, it takes time to write. And when ideas are put on keyboard and then brought into some order, it takes time. So, some people inspired me to bring everything together and to print it. Sergei Sologub told me several times, go publish. He was publishing, and he invited me to do that. Pastor Ryotin says, everything that is written stays. Everything that is just spoken disappears. Holy Spirit works from the ball of your pen. Write something down. And then Mikhailo Cherenkov said, bring everything together and we'll publish it. So I didn't even have to consider who will print it. I had to bring everything together. And then we brought those things together. And we thank God that through inspiration of many people, in the introductory word, I wrote that I thank my wife because she allowed me to spend time writing, not doing work at home or spending time in fellowship. Many writers are writing dedication to their wives. Now I understand why they write it. Of course, she allowed to do this work and did all the rest, but there are many other things. Inspiration. You said, quoted Pastor Ryotin, that Holy Spirit lives at the sharp point of the pen. I heard this phrase, don't wait for inspiration. Start writing. Is that true? Yes, it is true. At some point, I was inspired by reading Somer's Moem. I loved his genre. He's similar to Dostoevsky in my mind, and I love his train of thought. And I had his quote even in youth for a long time. He says, I don't believe in inspiration, only hard work works. Hard work makes sense. And this quote stays with me. Inspiration will come, but you don't wait for the inspiration. Only lazy people will blame their lack of work on lack of inspiration. You need to start working and then it will come. Said he, did you have time when you wrote without inspiration? When you did not have this excitement and you would still write? Different times, different situations. There was an author in Christian history, and I asked him, how did you achieve writing this voluminous book? And he says, I had this experience. I was doing fixing drapes at home, and I had this thought, and so he says I always keep a notepad and a pencil, and I held the drapes with one hand. I was writing my thoughts with the other. You have inspiration, you write the thought down, and then when you have no inspiration, you make it better, perfect it. So I don't think I could write without this process. You have enlightenment, you write it down, and then you describe it when you don't have inspiration. Konstantin, what's your inspiration? How did you write? I just sat down and wrote. One famous author said, it's hard to write. The harder it is to write, the better the book turns out. So, the harder the writing is, the better result is. Strange, but this paradox works. Writing this book was not easy, and at some point I thought, maybe I will never publish it. I was writing it for a year and a half, just sitting down and writing, and I'm grateful to Mikhail Cherenkov and his quote. He said, spend every day writing, not a day without a line. But that was my motto. I was trying at least. There were days, there were weeks without a line, but then I had to expedite, and with help of my colleagues, I understood that I had certain deadlines, certain schedules to meet, and I had to write. And I did. Thank you for your experience. Andriy, Sergei, who would like to share? I would agree here with what Sergei said. In fact, inspiration often comes when you're busy, when it's not comfortable, when your thoughts are distracted, or you want to go to sleep, and or you have a daughter to take care of, or a wife, and you want to write. You can't. Inspiration comes at an inconvenient moment, but the book is written when you have no inspiration. You just sit down and write. Do you crystallize it, like Sergei said? The main text is written when you have no inspiration. Inspiration gives you an idea, a direction, and then you keep working. Then, it's hard work. You sweat, really sweat, and deadlines help a lot. If you have a schedule that you have to meet, you have to submit it to editor, and that's it. Then you try to bring the most ideal text. I have experience of writing poems as a teenager and now from time to time. Here you cannot do without inspiration. There is internal attitude. You just pick up a pen and you write, or gadget and you type. But here we do not deny inspiration. Inspiration comes when you come to it. When you pick up a pen or Today it's not a pen, it's a keyboard of a computer.
Yes, please, Sergei. For me, inspiration would come when I made myself, when I would sit and write. In my case, it was more of an obedience to brothers, and also thankful due to Pastor Romanyuk and his pushes that he did with words. He encouraged all the time to write and write for me. But I had to make me write. And there were times when inspiration would come and the words were just pouring. But in most cases, I would make myself. And the thought was with me all the time. I heard it somewhere. If a writer does not cry, a reader would not cry either. Out of what cry? Because it's hard to write? I think Kostya has said, so if you suffered that process through, then probably it would touch the hearts. If you took it through your heart, then it would reach the reader. It's the same without message preaching. You work hard. Maybe it's better to spend time with your family, rest somewhere, but you work. I think it's not an easy work to do. I think it's blessed in the end. And looking back, I'm so thankful to Pastor Romanyuk and all the brothers that pushed me and encouraged me when I see the fruit that it has brought. And many brothers with the stories, I encourage them. It will be a blessing for other people. Thank you. So let's go back to the book of Pastor Mykola, Pastor's Diary. Please tell us about your book, the content, who it will be useful for. I will start from the end. It contains of 240 pages. It's long, but it's very short chapters. There is one picture, one for the whole book. Here I have one article where Jesus in shorts. It's a headline. Jesus in shorts. And for somebody, I know it's maybe provoking, but I used the picture where Jesus is, where he's just washing feet of his disciples, and he was. So it looked like he was in shorts, because to work like that, to wash, he had to look the way he should. So chronological way so it's a diary. This is the reaction to the events that took place, the thoughts that were in my head, and the thoughts I had during the service. So there were articles about the seminar. If I was in church, more articles, more thoughts about the church. That's why in the book there are 8 chapters. Think it's about God, faith, and people, life and ministry of a modern church. Thinking about interrelations. Maybe so. This is as far as relationship within the church and out of the church. The lessons of the past. Historical is not as much as I would like. Thinking about leadership, it also deals with my pastor's ministry. Thinking about the ministry when I used to study in biblical university, spiritual and social. This is about being a Christian and what happens in life in community, and my thoughts about different holidays. I have a rule for each Christian day of celebration. I try to find one thought or the one reference, biblical reference, that would make me to have a text or my thinking about this celebration. And you also said who would like that book, who would be interested in this book. I think most of all who know me, or those who carry the ministry similar to mine, teaching ministry, pastor's ministry. I think I don't think I use some complicated writing. There is a contemplation over church in short chapters. there are several long articles. So how many pages one article, one chapter? Approximately two, or sometimes three. I have a question as far as the contents of the book. It's not a secret. That's the one who practices writing articles and text and messages. Sometimes when they reread, go back to that preaching, you're surprised. Was it me who wrote this? Yes. Did it have this feeling? Yes, always. So maybe this is the moment. Yes. Sometimes you feel sorry and you're ashamed that you wrote it, and sometimes you think, "Wow, how could I have thought about that?" Or I even loved this idea, was interesting. So I think that's the best moment. It was inspired by God, because there are some things I would even take as a quote, but that was my quote from long ago. So sometimes you can refer to your own quote. I have a question. So what is your favorite chapter from all of this? What maybe a part of the book that you wrote was the most revealing to you when you were editing? This is compilation, so my favorite, maybe I cannot tell you. There's a heart in each chapter, in each part. There are some things that do not deal with spiritual. We have a tradition once a year. We have a family camp. Camping 5 families. They go somewhere near the water with friends, families, and children. And for the last 10 years, we've been having this tradition. We have morning reading together. We have leisure time, swimming, fishing, talking to each other, sitting by the night bonfire, and some wonderful time of fellowship. And during one of those camping, it was in Khmelnytsky region. We had a guy who loved fishing, and there was another guy who loved fishing, and there was a master class. So every day we would have different kinds of fish, and it was a real master class. We were all stunned. My fishing pole, it was something terrible. I thought I rather skillful in that, but they were professional guys, and they were profane. Those. And over this trip, I got an article, 8 reasons to fail something. And I took as an example fishing. So during this time of observing, when I was observing professionals, and those are like amateurs, so I saw that in many things in life. So many things that fail, they have good reasons. Can you remember of one of things? Oh, many. For example, I can recall several. Not enough preparation. Preparation was not good. You say you love it, you like to do, but to get deeper, get prepared with all the equipment. So if you do not invest, if you do not learn the situation, so you cannot have anything back. There is another reason. So there is another thing. So it happened that the best fishing from 6 in the morning till from 6 in the morning till 5 in the evening. It was the best time. Then it was from 4 in the afternoon till 6. But it was the best time. There was time from 12 from midnight, but it was the best time for fishing. So it happened that if you do one thing, if you have one favorite way to do that, your result can be very, very small, because you do the way how you used to do. In a good job, there is no norms, there are no perfect formula. You have to try and see. Some very surprising things will take place. I think we will not open to you all 8 secrets. It will be an encouragement to get a book and to buy all these 8 secrets how not to fail. Mykola, I have another question. When you spend time to edit your pastor's diary, have you ever had thoughts, maybe it's not a good idea, maybe I should leave it out? I had some thoughts. In reality, in heart, there is sometimes fears Maybe it's all because of some kind of humbleness. For who would read that? There's so many books in the world. So the book market is overfilled with different books. Very good serious names have been translated, and these authors, they have deeper experience and more books published and more experience. So yes, I had that fear even when so there's no way to go, there's no way back. It's in publishing already. So what did you want to say with your pastors? What was the core message? It says here, thinking about past and future, about church and social life, I would say this is my observation that I lived through from the experience with God, carrying on ministry for Him, and other ministers also are involved here. So people might find something useful, or even what I dream, it will be a push for their own thinking. So it happened to me. Sometimes I write somebody's thoughts, and then I thought, oh yes, maybe this is God's plan I can find for my life. Friends, thank you so much for all your comments that we have in our YouTube online. So where can we buy your book? Where can we under online broadcast you can find the reference where you can buy books. And one more question I would like. Grace Church. From Grace Church, it is writing us how to double passion for reading. It's a very good question. Maybe brothers know better than me. As a minister, I can say I have few time to read, and I understand not reading is bad for me. Reading scripture, I get used to make notes and learn from scripture, but I understand that in life, God taught me through books. In my spiritual biography, when I was in a spiritual desert, when I did not hear messages, words, I think it was God who would send a book to me, and they would help me to take back to life, and the experience of the authors, their spiritual experience or physical experience, it would inspire me. And especially from last years, I read what other ministers write because it's good and useful beneficial for my ministry. As a minister, I cannot help studying. I have to study. I need to be mentoring. For me, a book, this is inspiration for me to thinking deeper. There was another question. The question how to double your passion. So there's a passion, but how to double it. I have two methods from last year I discovered for myself. First one is a challenge. My friend, he offered, so let's have a challenge. He had 30 books, and I was in the middle of this challenge, so 15 books in half a year. And I did not read 9. They were different in volumes, but it was kind of cool just to have a challenge. They were both fiction, historical books, theological books. They were dust was covering them. So this was one of the way. And another, I studied at Lviv Theological Seminary, and there were deadlines on reading. And Sergei and we were studying. It was also a great opportunity for you to read the books that you probably would never read. And I'm not sorry for any of the books that I read. So just enter any Christian educational establishment and you will read every day and be obedient. So this is the two things that I had that helped me. One more question from our viewers who is following us, Alexandra and Talalai. I'm sorry if I got your last name wrong. So what is the best way to understand and what I've read? So if I read a paper book and then it's mine, I would underline, I would make notes there. But if I know if it's not me, then I would make notes somewhere on digital device. So right now in iPad, I have a file for each book where I write useful quotes and thoughts that came to my mind as a result of reading certain texts. And one of good experiences, first of all, to keep such notes and then go back to the book and to summarize the structure of the book, like tags. I'm trying to remember tag words. So this is the book, this topic, this theme. So whenever I need some particular theme, I know which book to turn to. And of course, tell your friend if you got a great idea. So I send quote to those who I mentor or just my friends, people. It's a very great thought. Or I tell my wife. So this is a quote. Listen to me. So in reality, to tell to somebody, it really helps to keep you in your memory. Yes, I agree. And also there is a good instrument as a tweeter. If next to you, so you just tweet it. So you pile this way, different, you summarize. Yeah, you can also go back and then share. Share is probably the key. So if you, in your memory, it will be alive, come alive. Yes, and here I also would like to offer my way. I try to read books so wherever I had the opportunity. All adults, they don't have time for reading books. There are no time. So the best is to take one book or couples, and so wherever you are and you have short breaks on the bus stop, subway, and right now or due to or over the quarantine, we have more opportunity for reading. So whenever you are reading a book, if it's a new book, it's desirably, after reading a chapter or half of it, ask yourself a question. So what does this chapter tell you? It's not you just penetrate it. You understand what it's about. So our perception is built that we're flying away after 3 sentences we read. And it's like we've read, but what we read about, it's hard to say, to answer this question. So the best way, after reading right away, what was it about? Go back to the chapter, to the beginning of the chapter. The chapter is about this and that author is saying to us. So there are several more moments here, more often authors. The main thing they write during the first 80 pages. So it's also a good key point that helps along. So if the book is longer, of course, yes. Thank you for your experience. Thank you. I have a good experience of piling and collecting quotes. If I'm reading a book, especially if it's an ebook, electronic book in Google Books, it's cool. Maybe if I underline in iPad, if I underline a quote or cite and comment, it synchronizes into my documents. So when I finish the book, I have a ready-made file. I use quote books for iPad. What is comfortable here, under each site there are tags to go along, and this way I have a library that I can use later on with the keywords. I can find site quotes on particular theme, and there are a couple of hundreds of such quotes. Okay, if you do not mind, we'll go to other books, to authors of other books. I know that you've written several books. Yes, that's true. But practically most of them, I was co-author with somebody. Most of them were together with Konstantin. I can show you the first one. Konstantin and I have written. It was a research, not as much as as a book like I was thinking making something up. For the most information, it was the information is a result of the survey and research that we made and an analysis. So it's more scientific work. What is the sphere of research? Here we have tried to find in Eurasia, we try to find new initiative of evangelical churches, how evangelical churches react on modern life and what new ideas for ministry they suggest, how they adapt to the ideas that came from West and how they adapt it in national frame. Who it would be interesting, for whom it would be interesting? For those who study missions of evangelical churches historically, but also in practical ways. There are several ideas of what works, how it works, and who do it reach. This book is being used as a textbook in several seminaries for those people who study mission. Have you already had a feedback on this book from people? Maybe if you remember, yes, we've already had. Even several readers we put on the cover, at the back of the cover. In reality, what is the uniqueness of this research? Because nobody had done anything like that yet. So if there will be more, then this book will be more interesting for comparison. But since there are still no researches like that, this book is a unique. So one book is a research book. What is the other one? So the book which I came here with, I want to switch to Russian because it's in Russian. Starting new churches today and tomorrow. I have also a co-author. This is Moroz. He is substitute of He is deputy of Evangelical Christian Baptist Union.
I wrote it with Vice President of Ukrainian Baptist Union, Sergei Moroz, and it's a manual that would help those people who are interested to start a new church, and these are ideas to start with. We did not want to write some super complex or super voluminous manual to cover all activities. Our task was to help with most simple, clear elements of starting a new church. Things you need to start, and then there is a list of literature to extend your knowledge. We started this book as a workbook for the Church of New Quarters, new blocks. We already started working with the Irpin Bible Church to start a new church, and we started with just a small workbook that grew into a larger book. Did this book help you organizing a new church? Yes, in fact, because many things that I describe here are things that we have practiced ourselves as we developed our team, and some things had to be thought ahead. And to plan, we had to foresee. We did not foresee coronavirus and going online. Not that, but some other elements had to be calculated ahead of time, and working ahead helped us organizing the church. So now you can extend another chapter. Church in time of isolation and pandemics. Right. We have one good friend, Brother Eric Yodis. He said that he is reading Russian very slowly, and he asked me to retell him chapter by chapter. And when I started retelling him the story, I understood that I want to upgraded. So, pandemics and online church is among new chapters, church of new portals, right? Sometimes books are like ladies. You need to caress them, but then at some point you need to leave them alone for a period. And I agree. Andriy has books on research, manuals, but also self-biography. Sergei Kolesnikov. You're the first pastor of Irpin Bible Church who wrote biography. That was in 2016. It was published back then, came into world with help of my brothers. Sergei, thank you for encouraging me to make it faster. And I thank Mission Eurasia. Everything was on time and it took a long time to write. It's my testimony. It's a story of my life because it's a great miracle that I'm here with you today. 2 years ago, I saw an old friend. He went through prison twice or more. He was addict. He's a believer now. And he listed 30 people of our circle back then that are not alive anymore, and most of them younger than me. What does that mean? If not for the Lord, I would not be here. I was among the leaders of those boys. Very likely that I would be dead by now, in a grave somewhere. So this is a story of my life, how God revealed to me step by step, saving my life from knives, from guns, from accidents. God is alive. What's the name of the book? The book is called To Lose in Order to Gain. And in fact, one of my first tattoos, and I'm writing that in the annotation, abbreviation, God will forgive everything. God is not a comrade, He will forgive everything. That was one of my first tattoos. But I never thought that I would meet God who would really forgive me. It's interesting that I lived in the center of Lviv, just across the prison. And then there was a time when I lived across from my home. And then I realized it's better to have a small piece of dark bread with God than without to have black caviar without God. So I write those life lessons that God has given me. Why did you call it To Lose in Order to Gain? Because everything I tried to gain in my life, respect, finance, wealth, achievements, turned out to be empty, nothing. When God revealed Himself as a living, as Savior, He allowed me to believe in Him really. I understood that it was worth losing everything else in life to gain Him, to gain living faith, to know Him, to have hope for eternal life, and to transform. Jesus is risen indeed. This book is about things you have experienced. God has written this book in your life, and you just put it on paper. Tell me, do you have testimonies of how your book impacted lives of other people? Yes. I'm thankful to Pastor Ryotin. He was my mentor and my teacher. He wrote more than 100 books himself, and he always said, write. In the beginning, I was doing it out of respect to him, but then I realized why, and I wrote dedication to this person because he inspired me to write. I realized that people start turning to God because of this book. I have several friends who are now in our church, and some were baptized. And I saw someone in the store one day. One man, he said, I read your book. I want to repent. I want to see you. 3 years. And this person is in a church with his family. There's another story. One person read it. He had addiction from drugs. And he said, I read about my life in your story. And this person is in church for more than a year. He's in ministry. And these stories encourage. So I think it was not in vain. Every effort was worth it. I see that it was God's direction, His providence. I'm thankful to Him for this book. If you edit it again, would you add more chapters? I'd add more pictures. There are pictures here. There are photos here. There are photos. There are photos from my life before. I have some preserved in surrounded with alcohol and everything, and crime, and now life after. Lord transformed me. My children grow up. Things changed in my life. I would add some pictures, maybe some other lessons about how God acts in my life in these recent years. Sergei, would you like to translate it in Ukrainian? Because young generation, school children, they speak Russian, but they read Ukrainian. And this book would be useful to them in Ukrainian. What do you think about it? This is a good idea, and I think maybe the next edition would have to be Ukrainian. Maybe Eurasia, Mission Eurasia will help with that. Why not? Thank you, friends, for being with us and writing comments and asking questions. And if in your life you have friends or family members who suffer from addictions, you could, among other things, give them a book about Sergei and his testimony, because his life is testimony that God can transform, He can free from all addiction. May this be inspiration for you. Please continue praying for your family members, and God will change them someday. Who knows? Let's move to the book written by Konstantin. Please tell us about your book. Who would be interested to read, and why did you write it? Yes, thank you for these questions. The book is entitled How Family Could Be a Mission. The book has 3 parts. First part is where I try to answer the question of what Bible says about family and the mission. Second part is about values of the family equipped for mission. And third part describes how each family can find its unique mission to serve people in our society. It's interesting that the topic of family and mission becomes more important these days in two ways. One way is that God gave us responsibility. We, as believing parents, need to educate our children and to bring them to God, and that's what we want. That's one side of our mission, our children, whom we lead to God. The second part of our mission is social. We live in the world of people. We live in society that is shaken by pain, wounded society. And here I see this mission illustrated by the parable of Good Samaritan. When you see Good Samaritan taking care of the wounded Israelite, children who suffer from abandonment, being orphans while their biological parents are still alive. Many other evils that traumatize children, and a Christian family can become a home, a fireplace for warmth and hope for children, but not just for children. Children grow up, and the childhood trauma continues to haunt them, to follow them all their lives, and they need our help. That's why when we are talking about mission, we say that we can become psychological parents, but also spiritual parents, mentors. This is what the book is all about. Konstantin, you have 17 children. What's the mission of your family? Your mission is to raise children. What would be your title of the mission? Our mission is to help our children to get to know God. We want to be a family that shares love and hope. Many children who have experienced trauma of orphanhood, that children that lost parents, they're alive somewhere, but they're not close. Children are wounded from the inside, and very often they don't even understand how deep that trauma is in their souls, but it will follow them all their lives. Every child needs a family. A person is formed within the family, whether you want it or not, but all our qualities, our personality, our habits come from a family. If you don't have a good family, you don't have good habits. Your street becomes your family, and that's scary. Children are full of problems, and we want to help them. This is motivation for me and my wife. This is how the Lord called us into this ministry. But each of us has its own ministry. Does that mean that every family has its unique mission? Yes. Every family has a mission. It's interesting to notice here that this mission is not separate. You cannot say that here is me, a man, a husband, person called to mission, and every person in my family needs to be part of my mission. No. Could be God calling my wife or my children into mission, and we would be called to support, because it's communal calling when you become part of the mission of your children or your wife. And this mission continues to flow. It's like passing the baton. Mission is multifaceted. Each person has their own mission, There are families, I know them, that serve to special children with disabilities. I would not be able to do that, but I know families who can. And I can kneel before them and thank God for giving them such power, such patience, such strength. God leads everyone to their own ministry. Some families go to international mission. It's not just one person or two. They take the whole family along. God calls everyone to their own ministry. Thank you, Konstantin, for introducing your book and for good ideas for our consideration. I'd like to remind each of you that you can ask questions to a specific author or overall if you're interested in tips on writing or tips on life. With your permission, we'll move to yet another author of Irpin Bible Church, Sergei Sologub. Sergei, tell us about your book. I think that's the book that is translated into several languages: Russian, English, German. Tell us. Alphabet of Worship. When I look back about this book, two images come out: fruit and a seed. A fruit because it came out of family worship that we had for 3.5 years. In addition to special time we have for prayer in the evening, we had a regular meeting in our family to worship God. And we wanted to share this experience in some way. So this book is a fruit. We did something, and what we experienced, what we survived. Vladimir Meleshko, my friend, says that some people are dancing at a rake, that is, hurting themselves over and over again, doing the same steps. So we want to help families who are experiencing hard time worshiping at home, and we wanted to share some good ideas. But this good experience crystallized can go further than you can go. I was at a conference in Singapore 2 years ago. I heard this statement: written word is a missionary. It crosses borders that you cannot cross. It will go where you cannot go, and it will do things you cannot do, and cheaper, because it's cheaper to send a book than to buy an airline ticket. But also, it can serve longer than your lifetime. We read many books of authors who are not longer with us. So that's one idea, fruit, but also a seed. I wanted to reach 5 largest language groups. 5 most popular languages in the world: Chinese, then English, then third is Hindi, then fourth is Spanish, and fifth, some decide between Russian, Arabic, and Portuguese. So this is what we want to do, to scale up our experience. First was published in Russian, then it was translated into Ukrainian. I was at Lviv seminary back then. I was a student, and it was my privilege to translate into Ukrainian. Then one of my friends wanted to pay for the translate into English. And so one of my friends paid for translation, and then a friend agreed to translate it, and the Moody Publishers plan to publish it in 2021. And this is the English copy. One pastor from Germany looked at it and said they want to publish it as well. It was already translated into German. The conference to present it was going to be in May, but I don't know if it will happen now due to coronavirus. Now we are going through Chinese translation. It goes through J now. She lives in St. Petersburg, and we started corresponding through Viber. So the book is being translated into Chinese, and now it's about Hindi. I would like to share it with brothers and sisters in that language, and someday we'll read Spanish, maybe. It's called Worship Alphabet for Families. Alphabet comes from Psalms. David, when he worshipped God, he often did it as acrostic, as a verse for each letter of alphabet. This is biblical idea. Then worship. Family book directed at God. 55 qualities that could be a good trampoline, springboard for families to begin. Last year we have gone through this book again. We practiced it before, and now we did it again last year, and we enjoyed it very much. And it's in the family. In one sentence, we would like to help parents to become missionaries for their children. Sometimes we think that our mission is to our neighbors and further on, but we need to start with sharing God's perfection, how great He is. He is shepherd and a designer and creator, architect. This great idea of God should be shared with children, and then they will spread it in their families. This is the idea. Sergei, thank you very much. I have a question. Tell me, what inspired you to write this book, to bring together these stories, these qualities of God? Someone said that books are written out of books. Maybe some book has inspired you to write your book. Yes. We already had an interview on this topic. Rob Reno wrote a book about parents that think forward, and I realize that I, as a pastor, am not looking forward to raising my children. I dedicate time to people, to projects in the church, but not to my children. And I wanted to reschedule my life to give priority to my children. That was the push. Thank you. Thank you, brothers, for presentation of your books, for your good words and good ideas. I have another request to Konstantin. The majority of you have published through Eurasia Mission. Can you tell us about your project? Of course. Mission Eurasia publishes books in addition to different ministries. One of dedications, one of areas of our work is publishing books. And we have in our publication series of national evangelical writers. Over 10-12 years, more than 50 Ukrainian authors have published. Majority wrote just one book, someone wrote 2 or 3. These series have focus on our national writers who have things to say. Of course, we are very respectful of authors who have written in the West. We like to read American, British, German authors, but we believe our authors have things to say. Every nation has its own message, and I'm glad that book of Sergei Sologub has such a powerful response. Maybe Andriy will share more. I remember when Sergei shared this dream about publishing a book, and he spoke about this at the youth leadership meeting of Baptist Union. And he said that he has a book, but it needs to be published. And we heard about this. We offered him, why don't you publish it as part of the series of National Evangelical Writers? I would like to invite everyone who is writing, if you would like to write and God inspires you to, you can come with your project of a book. And editorial team of this book series can happily study your initiative to publish your book. We invite you. Thank you. Thank you, Konstantin. We have some questions from the chat. I'd like to read them. But before, please tell us, are you working on the next book? And if you do, if you are, tell us. Are you working on a new book? I'm working on my second book. I try to write at least a line a day. If this book is dedicated to parents, to help parents to be missionaries to their children, now the next book is to train children as missionaries. So it's almost complete. I have still little ways to go. So you want parents to send children as missionaries. Would you send your own children as missionaries? It's hard, but if this is God's mission for my daughter, I need to equip her. And if that happens, this will happen if you teach her. We try to inspire her, and she's been on 3 short-term missions trips, and she goes every Friday into the city as a missionary. So God is working on my daughter's heart, maybe. Well, may God bless you. Brothers, are you working on another book? I'm working on my second book. It's called Theology for Life. And I'd like to offer foundations of biblical truths for family, for ministry. Will it be thick? Not really. Mykola, just like you, I try to write briefly. So, 80 pages and everything will be written right. It will be thicker than the first book. I'm still working in my heart. I'm not working on the paper or not typing yet, but I'm still thinking. I have this thought about Jesus, dream about Jesus who is very close, who is accessible. Maybe that would be evangelistic storybook to reach people outside the church. I'd like to open Jesus, who is very accessible. That's my dream. I'm thinking about it, I'm praying, and I'd like to start the process. When will you begin? Well, you can set a deadline right now. Starting on Monday, right? Well, starting on Sunday. First day of the week, Sunday. First book has inspired and gave me appetite to do more. I have this idea to bring together all the materials that we have developed with other pastors over 20 years of our church history, the experiences of Irpin Bible Church, to make this collection of documents and materials, but also the history of Irpin Bible Church, or experience of God with us and obedience of Irpin Bible Church. This is inspiration, but I already brought some documents together. Andriy, I'd like to rework this book on starting new churches. reconsider some things and rewrite some others based on experiences, add some things. Also, I'm considering another idea. I have a set of notes, but they come up maybe once a month. I'd like to make a small ethics manual. We'll see how it goes. And I have another dream for the future, dream I had since I was a teenager. I wanted to write a fiction book. Maybe I'll find time for that in the future. Great. Andriy, there is a question for you. You're the only author in our circle of more than one book, right? What's the difference between writing first book and second and third? I'll tell you. When you write the first book, you're not sure at all what you're doing and whether you should be doing it. But when you are done with the first, it's easier to do the second. It's like with anything. You are very scared of riding a bike until you start. And then when you overcome this fear, you can consider a motorbike or moped. Okay. Where do you seek ideas? Just from life. God is writing the story of our life, and we need to share it with other people. He is real, He is close. We just need to be attentive and write it down.
With me, it's often somebody requesting, so write about it. Give me to read what on your speech that you gave. So my writing is the answer to the request. Mykola, question for you from chat. Crypto Kid is writing, how can we repent in Irpin Bible Church? Irpin Bible Church accepts any kind of sinner. So not Irpin Bible Church. You can turn to God at any place that you are. You need to confess Jesus as God and repent your sins, and then you go to church that is near to you or to the minister, because you would need a mentor. But in reality, wherever Jesus is preached, there is opportunity to repent. Wherever you live, go to the nearest church that preaches evangelism, and Irpin Bible Church included. Although if God touches you, you can repent wherever you are. If Holy Spirit is touching you, so turn to Him. God is living, is alive, and He promised to forgive your sins. And I'm reading here, Sasha. I think it would be good to have a video of family worship in Sergei's family as an example. How could this family worship could be such videos? They have great influence. Yes, I had a request. It's like to take a picture of atom. So when you take a picture of atom, it flies away. So when you we don't have somebody else's eyes, then probably with the cameras it would be more artificial. I think it's better to do a family worship with several families. Once I remember we had several families and we get together, we acted out one story from the Bible. Such an experience of a transfer of worship in families. I think it's more productive. I can leave you a reference on video course how to do that. I think it would be useful. Yes, I think it would be useful. So follow online broadcast and then video later, and then you can find lessons that Sergei is referring to. And also for you, Sergei, and other brothers, maybe you can make audio of your book, especially autobiography. Well, I take it more as a working instrument, workbook. It's not just a talent. Maybe one day I will write fiction. So Sergei, maybe you can audio, make it audio format. Thank you, brothers, for wonderful time of fellowship. Thank you so much for all our viewers who were online. Thank you for all your questions. And at the end, I have a request. I want to read the verse Ecclesiastes 12:12. It says, Ecclesiastes Ecclesiastes 12:12. It says here, "Be warned, my son, of anything in addition to them, of making many books there is no end, and much study wears the body." What do you think? Well, to write is not easy, to study is hard. Okay, so if you would like to comment this verse, of course it's more like a fun, but if you have reaction, I can ask you question. So what would not wear our bodies out? Our bodies are worn by anything, laziness. So here we need to consider it's not just Solomon is telling us not to write, but he says there is some difficulties. So it's better to wear our bodies with reading books than to lie on the couch. And the last thing that we would like to point out for everybody who is following us online, which book would you recommend? Of course, you recommend your books, that's without a word. And I recommend all books which are presented, but one book that you would recommend for our viewers, which one would it be? Think, please. And I'm sorry, and of course, if you have in closing, there is something, one book and one thing that if you would like to address to people, I can say that our wish for everybody to read is necessary. It means like you're going upstairs, you broaden your worldview, and for many, I know it's a way how to let yourself to hear God better. This is one thing. As a recommendation, I have already did that. I want to repeat myself. Bonhoeffer, life in a Christian community, or living in unity, living together. Unfortunately, there is no Ukrainian translation. Still, why this book is relevant right now, since in the context of coronavirus and the church is not gathering, most of them not getting together. So just to reflect on your ecclesiasticism, how to be a Christian community even when we are not together physically, because God's plan is much deeper, and this book is very useful for reflection, rethinking of Christian community and unity. I would recommend, I'm inspired by autobiographical books, biographies. I would recommend, if you haven't read still, Evangelist Ivan Anishenko. Evangelist Ivan Anishenko. This is practice of his life, walking with God. It inspires a lot in the story how evangelistic movement started in Ukraine. I would emphasize two books. One book I try to read at least one or two a year by Tozer, Greatness of God. It's not very big. Aidan Tozer writes good books about God. Konstantin said that we're inspired by other books, but from recent books that I've read, Paul Miller, Life in Prayer, I love this book. When I opened the contents, I've read a lot of books about prayer, and I studied, researched prayer theme with youth ministry. But when I see the chapters, what God thinks, what Father knows how to make relationship with fathers. He does not just give like 10 effective tips for prayer. This book about Heavenly Father and how he gets over difficulties. Paul Miller, Life in Prayer, I recommend for reading. I would recommend a book, Johanna Reimer. It's also about family and mission. It's only in Ukrainian. Family and mission, and the link in between two. This is inspiring book, and also making us alert and sober. He raises serious questions. Why Christian world become non-Christian, and he's trying to answer that the problem is within the family. And it's a rather interesting book. And also, from such common recommendations as far as books, I would advise for believers, Christians, to read not just on Christian theological topics and things, but also books that are not Christian, so that maybe they are more circular, but they can give answers to some questions, no worse than spiritual. There are many of those. Today, the publishing house that we call them circular books, they also can publish books of religious authors, and they do it rather pretty well. For example, the books of Timothy Keller, I heard because of some circular publishing house, so why to work? So then he has many more books. So I recommend to read books of different authors, different publisher houses, and expand your worldview. You need to be critical, rational when you read a book. Do not take everything as truth, but from the other side, the books help us to have a different view on the world. I would recommend a book to read that this year. My friend, Theology in Post-Christian World. This is a try to reconsider some theological things that are looks to us like medieval, but in reality they have more in our practical life, in our modern post-Christian digital world, when everything needs to be reconsidered, redone. In reality, many Christian thoughts, they give the answer to the questions that seem to us very new. Thank you. For me, maybe 3 books. When you were sharing, brothers, I was thinking which books I could recommend to read. I would recommend the first book, Andrei Sheptinsky, Letter of Love. Dominic Bartholomew, God and His Image, a very strong book. And the other one, since we live in a time of hardship and testing, many people are suffering, Clive Lewis, Why We Did Not Get Our Faces. Thank you, brothers, for writing books. Thank you that you inspire others with your practical ideas, the church. And I wish you reaching your creative ideas, that everything that God put on your heart, the books would become reality. And for all of us who are watching, I wish for you to read good books, to be formed by them, and may your life become better from good books. With God, all the best.